Come on. There we go. All right. Hello and welcome to anyone who's watching this on YouTube after the fact. This is the VP Postgraduate question time event on Sunday just before the elections. Just for clarity and disclaiming purposes, Roar reached out to all of the candidates on this post via the SU election office, gave each candidate ample opportunity both to sign up for the event and to prepare with the questions that we have sent them for this event. Today we'll be having two candidates, one of whom is here with us today, and another who has sent us video responses to their questions, which we will be playing intermittently throughout. The event will be held in accordance with the SU's election guidelines, including the fact that no candidate is allowed to negatively campaign against another. And Roar, as a student media publication, does not support or endorse any specific candidate in this election and remains an impartial source. But yeah, so just getting started, Hina, we'll go with you first. For our first question, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Hina and I am the current KCLSU Vice President Postgraduate. I studied political economy at King's. I was born and brought up in Dubai, and I moved to London when I was 18 years old. I decided to run. I think there's a question about why I want to run, so I'm gonna leave that for then. But yeah, that's just a little bit about myself.
Great, thank you very much. And one thing I forgot to mention before, each candidate has 2 minutes to answer. If they go over 2 minutes, I will be cutting them off. Yeah, so we'll move on to Rebecca, who has submitted an audio and video response to the question.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Selling and I will be running for VP Postgraduate. Now, I hope, even though I'm not there in person, that you are enjoying your debates and that you can hopefully get something out of my answers as well. I am currently studying a postgraduate here at King's in law, specifically, if you're interested, in international dispute resolution. I was originally born in Germany, but much of my adolescence was actually spent living abroad in China. So I attended an international school there, hence the accent. After finishing school, I came to the UK and did my undergraduate here as well. In my free time, specifically based around King's, I quite enjoy the rowing club, the people are great, and the exercise is fun too. While running, I plan to focus on tuition fees.
There we go. Okay, yeah, so moving on to our second question. Basically, what motivated you to run in this election? What instigated your campaign?
So my campaign is focused around the hashtag 2 is better than 1 because I'm running for the post for the second time. And it's because a lot of the things that I hope to achieve in my first term did not actually go through because of COVID. And a lot of my priorities had to be realigned to suit the students' changing needs in these times. So while I did my best to tackle all those upcoming issues and introduce some sort of reform this year, I feel like there's still a lot more to do. So that's why I've decided to rerun and fulfill all my promises and further ensure a happy and inclusive space for all postgraduate students.
Great, thanks very much, Hina. We're going to move on to Rebecca's response.
What motivated me to run in this election is the exact same thing that motivated me to attend law school in the first place. Namely, the fact that I can help people and help people using skills that I've learned throughout my life. For example, I worked during my undergraduate at the law clinic, and really showed me how by communicating clearly with clients, you can sometimes resolve problems so simply. And by really gaining these skills throughout all of my education, I think that I could represent everyone's ideas very well. But what really pushed me towards this election specifically, and not just being a student rep in general, like I have been this past year, representing postgraduates at the academic board, is that I've seen the way King's treats students, and I've seen sort of how the pandemic can have such bad effects on students like myself. And I don't want that to happen to anyone. If I can prevent one person from going through, pre-recorded lectures or having trouble, accessing basic teaching content for which they paid, I think that would be spending my time worthwhile. So to conclude, the reason I want to run and what motivates me is that I like helping people. I think I have the skills to actually make a difference, and that I really want to stop people having to go through the same things that people like me and me have actually gone through.
You're mute again.
One day I'll get that right. Yeah, but to go back to you, Hina, sort of our first hot button issue of the event, a lot of people have called out the Students' Union in recent months and even years, saying that it's no longer functioning as a quote unquote students' union, so run for and by students. So the question for you would be, in your mind, what is the role of the Students' Union?
Firstly, like they advertise for students by students, I stick by that because all the decisions made within the SU come from the membership body of King's, which is around like 30 to 40,000 students. So it is there for the students, and it's there to make sure every student at King's is in there has somewhere they can go where they can connect with other people and build their communities and share experiences. But in recent times, a lot of these things are getting plagued with a lot of, I'd say, politics, and the student union has not been able to sort of effectively work because of a lot of, I'd say, connections with their personal universities and a lot of bureaucracy that goes on within it. But I think all student unions have their best interests of their students at their heart, and it should definitely be looked at in a positive way because it's their main aim and goal is to be there for their students. So, and I think a lot of it plays into who the elected officers are, how dedicated they are to their work, and how much they actually want to make change and sort of be there for their students. So I think there's a bit of a mismatch that's been going on recently, but hopefully this year we're able to sort of regain and revamp the student union impression.
Great, thanks very much, Hina. On to Rebecca's response.
I can understand why students are upset about their representation, because recently, definitely because the university is just not willing to budge, students have definitely not gotten what they wanted, and sometimes no matter how good you plead your case, you have to look at it objectively and come at it from a different angle. So I do understand the criticism. That being said, in my opinion, a student union is there to do what I implied earlier. It's there to represent student opinions and really to get them what they want and what they deserve. Of course, this is complicated in King's in particular through the governance structure. For example, the president of KCLSU is on the council, which, as I'm sure you know, means that they're not only representing the student voice there, but that they also have to vote in favor of what is best for King's. Now, what is best for King's would hopefully be what is best for students, but sometimes, especially in global crises such as this pandemic, that is really hard. But I think, you know, those challenges being said, I do think there is a balance that can be struck and that can get students the representation they need. And so I think, in conclusion, that student representation and the student union is there to do just that, to represent students and to represent their demands, their wishes, their cries of help, anything that they need. They are the sort of backup helper, the coach fighting in your corner while boxing.
Great. Moving on to our next question. What is the biggest issue, Hina, that you feel needs to be addressed by whoever wins this election in your role of VP Postgraduate?
I would say the two biggest things would be well-being, because COVID is not a short-term thing. We're going to feel the effects of it in the long term as well, especially if things go well by the start of next year. The transition phase will bring a lot of anxieties for people. Not everyone will be comfortable being around so many people again. I think well-being is something that needs to be prioritized, not just on the postgrad level, but on all student officers level. And also probably including personal tutor welfare training. A lot of the students were complaining about not having a point of contact within the university that they could just go to, and those contacts are supposed to be their personal tutors. So I think, and also increased peer support systems that will obviously help students to connect and empathize with each other, as well as develop skills and also improve well-being. And in terms of COVID interventions, I think a lot of Kings do not want to continue the implementation of the no detriment policy, but I think it should be carried forward to the next year as well, because a lot of the students will still be disadvantaged next year because it's not looking like everything is going to go back to normal. And I think also reigniting the Kings community feeling, because a lot of the students who have been studying online have clearly lost their attachment and their and just part of being a student at King's, like the whole community feeling is lost. So I think these four things are top priority and should be top priority for everyone running this election.
Great, thanks very much, Hina.
Students are currently having, I think, are all centered around either the pandemic or tuition fees. Now, I think the much more pressing one at the moment, at least, and definitely on the student mind, is tuition fees. Now, I categorize this into three categories. First, I think about it, the fact that currently tuition fees are only paid in 2 installments instead of 3, although, you know, including the examination term, there are actually 3 terms. Secondly, there keeps on being an increase each year in tuition fees, which means that I think there should be a tuition fee cap. In particular, increasing a lot next year is international student fees for postgraduate studies. And finally, which I think is a little bit tricky, is the idea of tuition fee refunds. Tuition fee refunds become problematic because tuition fee refunds have already sort of been rejected at the previous town hall meeting, I believe earlier this month. For those reasons, I put them square and center into my manifesto for VP Postgraduate. And then I'm also running for NUS conference delegate, because I think the way it's been approached by the current student union, particularly tuition fee refunds, could be improved a lot by getting all student unions in the UK together and all student unions demanding tuition fee refunds. Finally, I would sort of try to mitigate for postgraduates sort of a lot of issues that the pandemic has caused, which is mainly a lack of communal feeling and engagement, really.
Great. Okay, moving on to our next question. This was, as well as the previous question, these are questions that were submitted to us by some fellow students at King's via a poll on our Instagram account. But this student wants to ask, not all promises made by SU candidates seem to end up fulfilled once they enter office. So how do you plan on keeping yours should you be elected to the position?
I agree with that. A lot of the manifestos that candidates put out are usually a lot of fluff and nothing actually gets done, because once the officers start working and they actually learn how the union and the university operate, they realize that everything they've written can't be completed because it's just not feasible either way. But that is why in my manifesto, I mentioned that I'm not going to put out a manifesto that is going to be highly unfeasible and impractical, because I have the experience of being an officer earlier this year. And because of my experience, I know what can be done and what cannot be done, and how sort of to engage in dialogue with when you want to get things done. So I think these are why I get an advantage over the other candidates, because having experience of working with all of these fellow colleagues who are great to work with, but you have to sort of also realize that everything you put out can't be completed, and it's not just because you are not willing to work towards it, they're just external factors that sometimes are out of officers' control. So I would say having a very robust manifesto that is achievable is also key, because in the end, people do look at your manifesto and go like, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. But yeah, I think people should be more careful as well while putting out their manifesto.
Great, thanks very much. Moving on to Rebecca's response.
I can definitely understand why students might be worried that campaign promises might not happen. What I would do to ensure my campaign promises do happen is to build them on existing policies by KCLSU and existing policies by King's, and sort of, I suppose, take them to the next step. What do I mean by that? Well, the first issue KCLSU is already advocating on, so they already want a 3-payment system rather than, just 2 tuition fee payments throughout the year. The second one, the tuition fee cap, already exists because the UK government is granting protection to UK students, and I think it's only fair and equitable for international students to be afforded some type of protection as well. Now, the third policy that I plan to instate is sort of building postgraduate community work, and Hina, the current VP postgraduate, is already working on how to improve community engagement with postgraduates. So I would really, I suppose, build on her work and try to implement some policies. And at the moment, I'm definitely thinking of having postgraduate only events across campuses, but depending on what Hina thinks the problems are, this might be up to change. On that note, I think some of these plans might change anyways, because we don't know. An asteroid could hit Earth tomorrow.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So to touch on another hot topic issue, and I have to say it's probably the most hot button issue of the entire debate. What's your position on either full tuition refunds, partial tuition refunds, or just the idea in general?
My personal position is obviously all for it. Get as much money as you can back, because the students deserve it. They have not been able to attend campus or not been given the blended approach they were promised initially. But working from the SU, working with the university, and knowing how the finances work and how it's a very unfeasible promise, and it's something that I've seen on everyone's manifesto. But the only thing that could actually make it happen if everyone actually continues to work together, because getting refunds is not only King's thing. It's actually a national campaign, and it requires like very strong momentum and requires links within all the SUs to sort of come and like challenge the government. And I know in the town hall, Evelyn Welsh, the interim principal, said that there won't be any refunds, and I don't think that is likely to change unless the government puts pressure on individual universities to do that. And that is all because I've been working on this campaign and I've been trying to lobby the university the whole time. But it's being an officer, you realize like you can't just pick up the phone and call up the principal and be like, okay, refund students. It does not work like that. And so that's why I think coming from experience really helps, because I know what we can do and how sort of is the best way to tackle this issue. And it's not through lobbying Kings, it's more to put more efforts towards a national campaign that sort of aligns all UK universities as well.
Great, thanks very much. On to Rebecca's response.
As for the issue of tuition fees, I've already mentioned it in a previous question, but I definitely think students are entitled to tuition fee. The university promised you an education, and they promised by saying it would be primarily in-person teaching, and I haven't had a single in-person class. Now, to be fair, I do have, classes that aren't necessarily practical in their nature, and there was a national lockdown for some time. But even before that, when it was entirely possible health-wise, there was no in-person teaching. So the way I think about it is there's a contract of service between the university and the students, and we, the students, have not received that service that the university promised in return for the tuition fee. So what do you do when you don't receive a service? You get a refund. So I definitely think students are entitled to a refund. Whether it's, partial or a full refund, I think, will entirely depend upon how far you can push universities. But I think the concept behind it definitely sound. The problem, I think, is going to be much more the execution of it, because as we've seen, like I said, with a town hall meeting with, King's council members, there is a lot of resistance behind it. So my proposal, and the reason why I'm actually running for NUS conference delegate, is to go to the conference and really advocate there for tuition fee refunds, and then use the collective sort of power of all student unions pressuring every single university.
Great, thanks very much to Rebecca for that recording. Yeah, so for our penultimate point and the final proper question of the event, what's the aspect of your manifesto, Hina, that you're most excited about implementing should you be elected?
I think the one thing I'm really excited about is probably going back to normal life and having in-person engagements and sort of engaging the postgrad community in person again. And obviously that is government guidelines allowing. The second thing on my manifesto that I would really want to work towards is the COVID-19 interventions. So PGT students, I think, have been the worst cohort this whole pandemic, because they've only get a year at King's, and by the time things go back to normal, they'll already be graduated with no sense of like loyalty or connection or community sense with King's. So I want the university to grant access to resources and upcoming events and like a sort of a freshers to all graduating PGT students to make up for their lost time and lack of connection. Also facilitating the transition back to face-to-face teaching, while also keeping in mind anxieties of students that want to retain online lectures to tackle, obviously, inclusivity for all students. And one more thing would probably be the well-being aspect, like I mentioned earlier. And this time it would be to strengthen the involvement of PG students in sport teams and other activities or like societies, as they're usually catered for and advertised for UG students, and this will really help revamp the PG student well-being as well.
Great, thanks very much, Hina. On to Rebecca's call and response.
I am excited about quite a few things. I'm excited because through all of the policies that I've outlined in my manifesto, I get to actually help improve student lives and make King's a more fair and equal place. I know my policies are very much driven around money, but you know what, in the current times with the pandemic, money is something that we all have to worry about, or at least most people have to worry about. So it's definitely a student concern. And also because I think it'll improve the student experience. Now, specifically, I think what I'm most excited for is actually, you know, the social aspects of being a postgraduate representative, and sort of my third manifesto point, if you will, of increasing social engagement and sort of building or making people feel more a part of a community. And I'm really looking forward to meeting people and hearing their opinions and helping them, because that's what I like to do. That's what I want to do with my life, really. So I am really excited, and I do hope that you end up voting for me, but of course, that's up to you.
Great, thanks very much. We got through the end of it without me getting myself on mute again. For our last question, just as a very open forum type thing, Hina, is there anything else you'd like to tell voters before they go off to the polls on Monday?
I would say make the right choice and do look through people's manifestos. And I think manifestos are basically like the key to what the candidate actually stands for. And I'm just going to say one more thing: 2 is better than 1.
All right, thanks very much, Hina. Moving on to Rebecca's closing response.
My closing remarks, if you will, are that this is your election. This is the voters' election. I might be running here and, you know, sprouting off that I'll do this or that, and everyone else is sort of saying, oh, we can improve this and we can improve that. But ultimately, it is for you that I am doing this, and for you that you get to choose it. As in, you are the people that get to appoint us. You have the power in this situation. So really, what I hope you'll do is think about your position in this relationship and the power you have to shape the future. Thank you all for attending. I hope you have a lovely day, or afternoon, or evening. I don't know what time this is. This will be played at, rather. So it's been lovely being here via video, and I hope you all will vote for me. If not, vote for someone better. All right, have a nice day. Bye.
Great, thank you both very much for being here. For those of you watching on YouTube after the fact, but you know, if I somehow manage to get this uploaded before the next conference gets going, I will still be here for VP Welfare and Community at 3 and VP Education Health at 4. You can then catch, as you know, most of you will be watching this on YouTube, or on our Instagram page, we will be posting short bullet point versions of the candidates' responses. You can catch us at roar.news on Instagram. Thank you very much for coming.